Hey everyone, I'm Karen Bolter. It's really great to see everyone today. Thanks for coming and for doing the important work that you do. I work for EXP and I'm a climate scientist, so I lead actionable initiatives to help local governments adapt to increasing hazards like sea level rise. So this panel is about climate change, and it's a really complex existential threat. It's so long-term. We talk about things like 2100. So communicating about climate change can be really tricky. It's so conceptual. We use these terms like adaptation, mitigation, sustainability, resilience, and sometimes it's hard to connect those conceptual terms to like tangible things in all the sectors that we work in: water, wastewater, transportation. But you'd be surprised in a lot of the projects that you do, there's some part of it, and it's growing, to add more and more sustainability and resilience. So I'm really excited that we have such an awesome panel today. And my goal for us is to really talk about ways that we're bridging that information action gap, and we're having specific data-driven decision-making to understand what the future threats are and how we can address them. I led the Miami-Dade County sea level rise strategy. If you've seen that, we had a lot of amazing specific pathways, and the big message from that strategy is we really need to understand what the problem is and what our unique problem in South Florida, right? Because we have water coming from every direction. We have groundwater, we have water from the Everglades, from the west, and so with all these sources of compound flooding, what can we do to kind of not just address the risks that are happening right now and reacting to problems, right, as they occur? We see impacts of flooding, of hurricanes, and we react. Why can't we shift to be more preventative and proactive? And that's really what resilience is all about. We can bounce back further ahead after a disaster. And also preparing by choosing those pathways that are equitable to the community and that provide co-benefits like green infrastructure. And there's a huge need here. We're seeing more and more extreme weather events, rain bombs, storm surge, king tides, and these things occur together, compound flooding, and we see these impacts from compromised drainage, environmental contamination. And with all of this increased hazard, there's also more exposure because we keep developing. So we really need to keep up our development to be sustainable and resilient so we can support our growing population and maintain levels of service, to have the infrastructure to support these people in our community. So we're going to talk about how we can keep up with that demand despite the increasing frequency, duration, and intensity of extreme events. So we have this amazing panel. We'll start with introductions and talk about how we can address this growing need, what the different communities, cities, and counties around Florida have been doing, and I'm excited to hear about the initiatives. So let's start with the introductions. Patricia?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that we are between, our panel is right before lunch, so be patient. Hopefully breakfast was good. My name is Patricia Gomez, and I'm the Deputy Chief Resilience Officer and Director of Energy for Miami-Dade County. And for those of you that are not from Miami-Dade, we are kind of like the regional, if you think about it, kind of the regional government. So in Miami-Dade County, we have around 2.9 million people, and we have 34 municipalities. But our mayor doesn't direct or dictate what happens in the municipalities. We work based on collaboration, partnerships, and cooperation. So we do provide a lot of the services that many of the municipalities use, but we also have separate roles. So that's our perspective. We usually work for the entire county, the entire community.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Miami for those of you that are from out of town. This is a wonderful conference and happy to be here, and of course with our colleagues. I worked with Patricia years ago and worked with Matt over time and Karen as well. So it's nice to weave our stories together. So I work for the City of Miami Beach. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer as well as the Director for Environment and Sustainability. So if you haven't visited Miami Beach yet, please come do so. We are the barrier island that helps to protect the mainland. You know, we're about 4.5 feet above sea level, so we are highly vulnerable. But if you have been there, you'll note we're also highly valuable. It's a beautiful city with 14 historic districts, a 7-mile dune system, and we're working really hard on climate change adaptation and mitigation. I like to refer to Miami Beach as a living laboratory because we have done so many projects, from road elevation to larger stormwater systems to changing our urban planning as we prepare for climate. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Anderson. I'm Assistant Director for Mobility and Sustainability for the City of Coral Gables. Coral Gables is a city just west of City of Miami. We actually border City of Miami. We work really closely with all our colleagues here, including the county. And part of my role is I actually joined the city about 8 years ago and started the sustainability program in the City of Coral Gables, and recently have also taken on the role of overseeing our transit options in the city. So really connecting sustainability, resilience, and also bringing transportation into that conversation. So it's a very unique role and something I look forward to continue the efforts, and I'll talk a little bit about that throughout this panel on some of the efforts that we've been undertaking in the city.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kyle Harris. I'm with the senior planner with the City of Cape Canaveral. We came down here with using the Bright Line yesterday, which was pretty exciting. So, yeah, so we a lot like down here. We're very vulnerable. We're a little over 2 square miles, a population of about 10,000 people, and we are surrounded by water on both sides. So we're all about trying to find creative ways to address. We're mostly built out, but the development that we do have, we're trying to make sure we're future ready, and then mitigate some of that, the impervious surfaces that are already there, trying to kind of tackle that and go back, after the fact. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right, I'm going to be asking each of the panelists just about a specific example of a climate resilient initiative in your city. So I'll start with Amy. I know that Miami Beach has really evolved and accomplished with a lot of successful implementation of built projects like Sunset Harbor, Brittany Bay, and Canopy Park. So can you tell us a little about those?
Yeah, sure. So we have really kind of tackled head-on some of these climate issues, trying to improve our infrastructure today while making sure that we're building in the risk that we're going to be facing, now and in the future. So a great example we have is Sunset Harbor, which is a small neighborhood on Miami Beach. If you take the Venetian Causeway over to Miami Beach, it's that first neighborhood there on your left. This is a neighborhood that in the early 2000s and up until about 2015 was experiencing pretty routine sunny day flooding. So no storm, no hurricane, no rainfall, but just as a matter of the tides getting higher over time due to sea level rise, having just flooding in the streets. So the project was done really in a very ambitious order to elevate the streets. So streets were raised as much as 2.5 feet NAVD. We spent about $28 million as a city on that neighborhood, added in new stormwater, new water and sewer, new pump stations, but at the same time working really hard to improve the urban planning of the area. So urban planning of the past is not necessarily always the best. So we went ahead and made sure to take a bunch of the parking and move it into garages, to expand and have outdoor cafes, and to really add in that urban tree canopy as well. And now it's really, really, really walkable. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's thriving. We've seen 195 avoided flood incidents since that project was completed in 2017. So that's one that we're pretty excited about. And we have, about 3 other neighborhoods done, many more on deck. We have a neighborhood prioritization plan with about 3 major neighborhoods at different phases of concept and planning and design. But that's something that was going to take a long time to do through our city, will never be done, and I think we'll always be adapting. Another quick example, you mentioned Brittany Bay Park. We don't have a lot of space on Miami Beach. We're very small. So we're 7 miles long, about 1 mile wide, and we don't have acres and acres of green space to help manage water or even to keep the water out. So Brittany Bay is a really interesting study of where it's a city-owned park that instead of replacing the seawall with just a traditional seawall, we pulled the seawall into the park, created a walking pathway near the water, and then added in about 600 mangroves and kind of a bioswale area so that the park can flood and the park can drain, but that we can have it as a buffer to protect the neighborhood, but also that people can enjoy it, right? People come to Miami because they want to enjoy nature. So it's really important to us that we have things like platform lookouts and that we're protecting those views as well. But that's just one example.
Amazing. Really, really amazing. And I love how you're tracking the metrics. Like, you know exactly 196, you know, you can figure out what those would cost and do a cost benefit and see that it was cost effective. Really cool work, Amy. And next I'm going to ask Patricia. Miami-Dade County is doing such incredible work, so many initiatives to choose from, but maybe you could speak a little about the extreme heat work being done and some of the work in Biscayne Bay.
Certainly, and I think I'm going to start with the Biscayne Bay because, as Amy mentioned, a lot of the flooding and the water reaches our Biscayne Bay, right? And we have a lot of problems with fish kills and loss of seagrass and many other environmental problems. So everything that we do in the land and that the cities do in the land affect our Biscayne Bay or help our Biscayne Bay. So the mayor, Daniela Living Cava, appointed the chief bay officer and the first in the world chief heat officer when she started her term, and it has been very successful. For the chief bay officer, we just released maybe last year, a study with the South Florida Water Management District that quantified the annual value of the bay. And we know it's around $64 billion, the meaning our bay, and it's our blue heart, and as we say here, the environment is our economy. In addition to that, we have launched an educational campaign to talk about Biscayne Bay and definitely working with the other stakeholders, such as the South Florida Water Management District, the municipalities, and also the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Regarding the extreme heat, I mean, I don't have to tell you, we all survived the 2023 summer, right? We all felt that it was a lot hotter. And so we know that that's an area we need to focus. And so we have now a plan to combat the extreme heat. And we are implementing that plan. Last year, we installed 1,700 energy efficient AC units in public housing in partnership with our Department of Public Housing and Community Development. In addition to that, we activated cooling sites, our parks and libraries, and we also provided water and cooling towels to our unsheltered population, which are the most vulnerable to extreme heat. And we have been training, doing health trainings. We've trained over 400 volunteers, staff at summer camps. And we also partnered with the National Weather Service and Department of Emergency Management to pilot and update protocols for heat advisories and warming. And in the side of the solutions and nature-based solutions, we know trees provide such a relief for heat, not only for heat, but it brings other benefits. So we planted over 16,000 trees and gave over 10,000 more. Our goal is to bring our canopy coverage to 30%, and we know that the low-income neighborhoods are the ones that have a less of a canopy coverage. So we are prioritizing those neighborhoods for tree planting. So working in a lot of things, but these two are important.
I love that you ended on the tree canopy because I was going to ask Matt, I was going to acknowledge Miami-Dade County is doing amazingly. Coral Gables has the second largest tree canopy in the state, 41%. And Matt was telling me how the city was planned that way. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so I'd like to say our thoughts on resilience really started when our city was founded. So we're celebrating our 100-year anniversary as a city next year. But when our city was first planned, and I think we were one of the first planned cities in the entire United States. So when our city was being laid out, one of the first thoughts was tree-lined streets. So those seeds that were planted almost 100 years ago, we're seeing those benefits now. So as Karen said, we have 41% tree coverage in our city. If you've been through our city, you know you're in Coral Gables. It's live oaks, About 25% of our tree canopy consists of live oaks. We prioritize native, resilient tree species in our city. You don't mess with trees when you're in Coral Gables. We are very serious about that. We have a very aggressive tree succession plan as well. And like I said, it really started with our founder, George Merrick, and really has carried through. We have a green space management team within our city that is an entire group of professionals that is tasked with reviewing tree permits and so on and so forth. And Patricia kind of already touched on the environmental benefits of that. So we're seeing the benefits of our early founders now, and we'll see it into the future. And part of what we also do is we get our community out there and we get them engaged. So we do community events. We have a Keep Coral Gables Beautiful program that we've done actually over 135 events over the last 3 years, engaging our businesses, engaging our residents, engaging visitors to our city to come out, not only do litter cleanups, but also get out there and plant native species with us. So continuing to expand our tree canopy and that green infrastructure. On top of the southern end of our city, has a very extensive mangrove system that borders Matheson Hammock Park, which is a county park. So even that is benefiting us with preventing coastal erosion and everything related to that, shoreline protection. So we're very beneficial that we have the tree canopy that we have, and that we have a lot of green infrastructure already within our city that we protect to the highest levels.
Thank you, Matt. And Kyle, I would love to hear about how you're building resilience and preparing with the Cape Canaveral 2063 plan.
Sure. So, sort of what you said earlier, we have a lot of these far off dates, and you guys are turning 100 this year. We were established in 1963. So, 2063 will be 100 years of Cape Canaveral. And so, the point of calling our resilience division 2063 is we want to know, what kind of city do we want it to be in 100 years from when it was founded. So, if you guys saw Lexi Miller earlier, she mentioned that Cape Canaveral, when it was founded during the space race, was all about just laying down streets and building houses without much concern for stormwater management, things like that. So there's a lot of what it really comes down to, I think, is we've shifted the mindset of not only us, but our elected officials to really make resiliency and sustainability a priority. So I think for a city of our size, we're kind of punching above our weight class with some of the measures we're taking. We've just recently passed an ordinance that will eliminate minimum parking requirements for certain uses, which is kind of a progressive thing to do as far as resiliency in our county. So we have all sorts of these measures that are over time are building up, so we can facilitate some sustainable development, and then just education and outreach is a big part of what we do. And we have sea oak plantings, and people are very supportive of what we do, which is great. We're very lucky for that. And so 2063 is kind of about keeping that going and making sure that we keep the ball rolling.
Thanks, Kyle. Awesome. Well, the next set of questions is about the unique challenges and solutions related to climate resilience. I've read that in South Florida, we have a culture of seawalls. It can sometimes be so much harder to add green infrastructure and co-benefits to a project and just implement urban planning like low-impact development. So how can we overcome those challenges? So I'll start with asking Amy about the dune system in Miami Beach. It's kind of like what Alexis said about Cape Canaveral earlier. Is like, when you look along the barrier islands, it's the area facing the intercoastal or the bay that's the low-lying area, and you get up to the dunes. If you raise the sea level slowly, all that's left is the beach, but it's like one little wave and it's all going to wash away. So those dunes are really the first line of defense. And you guys have an amazing dune system in Miami Beach for keeping your resilience to shocks and stressors, right?
Yeah, and thank you, Karen. And especially with the storms we saw on the West Coast hitting Naples and other places, we realized the value of our dune system. So in the 80s, the Army Corps of Engineers did a lot of beach renourishment, built that dune system, and it frankly didn't do very well, kind of washed away. So I think everybody learned, and then a lot of effort was put on vegetation and the ability of nature and vegetation to trap sand, to keep the sand there, to help the dunes grow higher and stronger, while also providing biodiversity and habitat and cooling. So our dune system has grown pretty dramatically. We have a highest point of 18 feet in South Point Park. On average, I would say it's about 10 feet. And one of the things my team does is I kind of call it gardening. They laugh at me because it's not. But that vegetation and maintaining it is so important. So we actively are removing invasive species. We are replanting. We are educating. We are trying to also maintain a really nice height for our sea turtles. We are home for nesting for endangered sea turtles, which is really cool about Miami Beach. But we also have a lot of tourism activity and a lot of lights, so sort of that relationship. It's really important for us to keep the vegetation at a good level because of that as well. The Army Corps of Engineers estimated there's about a $20 million a year net benefit in the dunes just from protecting against storm damage as well. So I think they're really our biggest line of defense, very important to us. We also have a blue-green infrastructure plan that we adopted in 2020. And what that does is really looks at what kinds of green infrastructure is feasible within an island like Miami Beach. And it's very challenging. So for example, bioswales is really like a hot topic, and it's really nice to say green infrastructure will cure all of our climate change concerns. But in reality, you have to have elevation and space to do all of that. We have tested bioswales. If they're too low, if you just think about it, they can't drain. They can't drain into Biscayne Bay. They don't have the water sort of treatment and cleaning ability to cleanse out those pollutants if they're not draining properly. So they really can only be used in higher areas of Miami Beach, and that's something that we found and we've shared with others across Miami-Dade County. It is something that we have to think about. We also have an aquatic preserve. So Biscayne Bay is very protected, so we can't plant mangroves out into the bay, right? And so there are disincentives to have living shorelines and to do different ways that we could conceivably protect us, because we don't really want to pit those two ecosystems against each other. So those are some of the challenges we face, and that's why we try to pull the seawalls inland and then have the living shoreline more outward, but we have very limited space. So in the context of our island, those are some of the things that we are constantly designing but with our broader neighborhood improvement plans, we are evaluating them for opportunities for that green infrastructure. But I think we all have a long way to go for stormwater management planning, because the traditional modeling doesn't really give our engineers a way to understand how blue-green infrastructure can help. So it's kind of a mix of, this is a great concept, but how do we actually make it happen? And how does it alleviate some of the burden of that stormwater? And if it doesn't, let's recognize all those other benefits like cooling, like water quality treatment.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about challenges and solutions, the solutions with climate change, we put them in those buckets of adaptation and mitigation. So for adapting, we want to raise, we want to protect, we want to accommodate, but the problem is that a lot of those actions have a carbon footprint. And so we need to be balancing that with reducing emissions. And so that brings me to asking Matt about all the amazing Coral Gables work on the Green Buildings program, EV charging, some of those initiatives for reducing emissions.
Yeah, so we've really looked at reducing emissions. We developed our sustainability management plan. That was one of the first tasks I had when I joined the city, was developing a sustainability management plan, setting goals looking forward, which actually aligns, like I said, next year with our 100-year anniversary. So honoring our city's past, but also looking forward and saying, what's the next 100 years of our city going to look like? So we started looking at how can we set forth policy that's going to help us not only reduce our emissions, but also help us adapt. So we set goals of 20%, greenhouse gas emission reductions, energy use, water use, waste by 2025, and I'm happy to say that we're almost hitting those goals. Coming up on our 10-year plan, we've reduced our community-wide emissions by 20%. Our energy use is right there at about 18% usage reduction. And through policies like our green building policy, which I know the city of Miami Beach and the county have similar policies, looking at making sure any new infrastructure that comes into our city is being built to the highest environmental standards and is being built resilient. And not only looking at that type of infrastructure, not just our buildings, but looking at pump stations and using Envision is basically looking at that and making that a requirement for any new infrastructure we have in. And we are actually one of the first wastewater stations that were put in our city that we just recently redid was the first one in the state of Florida to receive Envision certification. So not only looking at it from a sustainability perspective, but also looking at it from a resiliency perspective. And then on the EV charging front, we've really been trying to help lead that effort. We actually 12% of our city fleet is electric, which when I talk to people in the industry around the country, that is right near the top in the country as far as that goes. We also last year updated our EV Ready code to pass one of the most forward-thinking EV policies when it comes to requirements for new developments when they come into the city, what's required of them as far as EV infrastructure goes. So we want to lead by example as a city and adopt that and looking at our own city fleet, but also making sure that we are ready for not only now, but what the future is going to look like when it comes to the way people are getting around our city and the impact that transportation has. And I'm sure it's no different in any other city. Transportation is our largest greenhouse gas sector that we need to be working on. So that's why in the unique role that I sit in now, not only overseeing transportation, but also overseeing sustainability, I'm able to make that connection and be able to help look at how we're planning for the future and how we're going to be moving people around efficiently and sustainably around our city.
Thanks, Matt. And, we over-prepared our questions. We had some questions about financing, incentivizing, risk assessments, policy, collaboration. Maybe we can, with just a few minutes left and we want to save some questions, maybe we could start with Kyle and go down and everyone just, pick one of your favorite answers just to really quickly, something that you want to leave everyone with
Sure.
that you're proud of for your city, your county.
Yeah, I'll talk about, I think this was the next question anyway, but our, the City of Cape Canaveral Community Center, which we call the C5, because the other thing's a mouthful. And I wrote down numbers because our chief resilience manager is here, and I would probably get in trouble if I got any of these wrong. But we have a solar array on top of this building. It's meant to, eventually we'd like it to operate as a resilience hub. Somewhere, on blue sky days, it operates as normal, but post-disaster recovery, pre-hurricane prep, people can go there, charge their phones, get food and water, electricity. But so part of that is we have a solar array on the roof that has generated 113 megawatt hours of clean electricity since we put it up in June of 2022, which is the equivalent of 1,300 trees or 87 tons of CO2 offset. It's offsetting 54% of the building's electricity usage at this point, and it's really just phase one. We would like to have a battery storage system where we can start to harness that energy and continue to use it. So in that same vein, outside of the C5, we have a 931,000 gallon exfiltration system. That we have. Cape Canaveral has had some issues in the past because of the way it's been developed and high levels of impervious surface where flooding can occur pretty regularly, and that's probably the top concern we hear about from citizens. So this exfiltration system has made a huge difference. It's taken water, off the streets, obviously, and out of the lagoon. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good for a city of our size. I think it's very impressive, and I'm proud of it.
So I'll be quick. I know we only got a couple more seconds, but one thing I'm really, really proud of, and this was very forward thinking on behalf of our city administration and our elected leaders, we started in 2016 a sea level rise mitigation fund where we were setting aside money each year for future impacts. That doesn't mean we're not doing the work now. We're doing it through our capital improvement, but we also wanted to set additional money aside for future leaders of our city to be able to access, whether it be for grant funding or for grant matching or whatever. So we've already set aside $16 million as part of this fund with the goal of having $100 million by 2040. And most cities are just worried about balancing their budget at the end of the year. For us, we're not only balancing our budget, but we're thinking responsibly about what the future is going to hold and making sure that we're giving access to future residents and future elected leaders funds that they can tap into to be able to adapt to these shocks and stretches that we face that we know are going to be costly to adapt to.
So we're almost out of time, but I'll just mention, I think funding is a really important question because I know at least on Miami Beach, 75% of the property is privately owned. So as government, we talk a lot about public infrastructure, but we also really need to be thinking about resilience holistically and making sure that private property owners are also resilient to whatever may come and helping be more sustainable as well. So we did establish a resilience fund for private property owners to it's called our Private Property Adaptation Program. We call it Fight the Flood. And we just had our first cohort, and we're opening up the applications again. But essentially, we offer homeowners an engineering assessment to help identify what areas on their property could be improved. And then they're able to apply and receive up to $20,000 in grant improvements. It's a matching grant, so they have to, put their own money in. But that is really interesting for us. We're testing out things like rain gardens, bioswales. Through this program, 2 homes were selected for home elevation through FEMA. Raising mechanical and electric equipment. So I do think part of the future needs to be thinking about this existing housing stock, because that newer housing stock, I mean, it is resilient. It is, and Miami Beach is also sustainable. It has to be, LEED gold if it's above a certain size. So I think that blend is really important for all of us to think about. How are we going to pay for this? What are ways to incentivize? Because we're going to pay one way or the other. So that's something that we're really proud of and continuing to work on.
And in the extra time, I'm going to talk about the Back Bay study, because I'm sure everybody here is wondering where we are going, what we are doing. So I'm going to summarize 5 years of history in 1 minute, which is tough. So bear with me. So as you know, the Back Bay study with the U.S. Corps of Engineers have been on the books for 4 to 5 years. We have a stop, we have go, we have a stop. But recently in August 2023, our Mayor, Daniela Levin Cava, we met with Assistant Secretary of the Army of Civil Works, Michael Connor, and they decided to move forward with the strategy. This was as a result of the last iteration, where the community decided that what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was proposing was not a fit for our community. They were going through proposal of walls and great infrastructure that doesn't really fit well with our geology and our community. And so this time around, things were different. And in addition to that, it was decided to accelerate the process. So right now we are looking at the multiple lines of defense and completing a CHIS report for the WRDA, which is the Water Resource Development Act of 2024. So very, very compressed timeline. And in that, we will include 3 main components: the protection of dozens of critical facilities, such as fire stations, wastewater treatment plants, a component that it's called by the Corps non-structural, but it's the elevation of residential homes and flood-proofing of commercial buildings, like Amy was saying, what we can do to really prepare our community. And then the third part was the nature-based pilot program that we wanted to be authorized for this project. So I want to call the attention to those that live here in Miami-Dade to stay tuned. We are going to release the report with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is going to release the report around April, and we will have 30 days for comments. But before that, we are gonna have a webinar where we will answer questions and provide an update. So when you see the announcement, please stay tuned, registered, and we wanted to hear your feedback. This has been a community-led project, and we as the local sponsor, we are trying to improve the process to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you to all the panelists. I don't think we have time for questions unless someone has a quick one. Yeah, this was amazing. Really acknowledge you guys for your amazing work. It's incredible. Thank you.